Welcome to the ACT podcast. I'm Jo, the Admin and Development Officer, and I'm here with Lizzie, the Executive Officer. And it's Friday, so we want to do a short What's News update for you. Hope you've had a good week back after half term. Lizzie, there have been some things published this week. What's been happening?
Absolutely. Since the half-term break, there have been a couple of big news items in the education world. The first is that the government have published their updated version of Keeping Children Safe in Education, which is a statutory safeguarding guidance for schools. And this version now includes guidance relating to gender questioning children, which is something we've been waiting for many years. The previous government published a version which then was in a consultation stage, and then we got a new government, so we've been waiting, been repeated delays. The other news is that we now have the SEND white paper. So these are the detailed plans that the government have published in how they're going to reform the SEND system, and that's particularly timely because our recent journal was all about special educational needs and potentially some of the significant changes that are on the way. So now we have a bit more of a handle on actually what will be on the way.
So what is on the way?
So should we start with the most recent, which is the SEND white paper? And this has been in the news. Lots of parents, in fact, lots of very concerned parents, lots of different perspectives on this in the media, on social media, etc. And the biggest change is that in about 9 years, so by about 2035, only children with the most complex needs will qualify for an EHCP, which, as we know, are legal documents. They're overseen by local authorities. We know there's been a massive jump, so they've doubled since 2015, and the government are now saying that there will be a reduction in this, but there will be individual support plans for all SEND pupils, and there'll also be a new tiered model of support that will be embedded across schools, and also will take into account the changes in the national curriculum, which is ongoing at the moment.
Some of this feels like this is what we used to have and rehashing of ideas. How confident are you that this is going to bring some real and necessary change?
Gosh, I really don't know. I think it's great that all children with special educational needs will have something called an individual support plan, and that will set out the expectations of day-to-day needs, of intended outcomes for those children, and schools will be responsible for them in consultation with parents. That's good. They must be reviewed at least annually. Yeah, in reality, unless we have the funding for the staff to review the ability for staff to be trained in how to implement, it could be meaningless. Yeah, I think parents are very concerned, particularly for those that already or are perhaps going through the process of applying for an EHCP. Children who already have them will keep them until the end of their current phase of education. So when they go from primary to secondary, there'll be a reassessment at that transition point. Parents will still be able to apply for EHCPs, and there'll be tribunals where they can appeal decisions, but they're going to be massively reduced and reserved for the most needy. And I don't know exactly what that means.
It's a really hard one, isn't it? And I know a lot of parents are very wary about what this new approach is going to involve, but I guess teachers are too, and what that's going to look like in schools, and maybe learning what is best practice, what is working in some schools. How do we need to change things to make this more inclusive school environment work? It's a very worrying time for a lot of people.
It is, and I think the government are trying to say that, not that I'm necessarily defending their approach, but because they're also going to implement new inclusion standards, which will set out what families should expect from schools at each level, then there will be more responsibility for mainstream schools to implement earlier intervention. I don't know exactly how these standards are going to be examined or what kind of accountability there's going to be, but I know that they want to make inclusion the norm, not just something for kids with EHCPs. And then the idea is that if the norm is more inclusive, then only those that have the severe end of the spectrum of needs will require an EHCP. I think, without sufficient funding, who knows, it could be pie in the sky. So we've got to, as Christians, we've got to try and not to be too cynical, but also to remember that every child deserves to be included in our classrooms. We all want this to be a less adversarial process. We know, don't we, that parents complain about having to fight for their children, for their needs. And I can see firsthand through friends who've gone through that battle, through teachers who are trying to support students who desperately need more help, how difficult it can be. So let's pray that schools can meet these complex needs, that there'll be enough funding, that we'll have that great empathy, resilience and compassion as we seek to serve every child.
Absolutely, and we've got a lot of hopes pinned on this working well, haven't we?
Absolutely.
It matters. So we've been waiting a really long time for this guidance on gender questioning children. What's your take on that guidance?
Yeah, we have been waiting a really long time for various reasons, as I mentioned earlier. I think there are a couple of positives that we can take away from the guidance. There's the very matter that it is included in the Keeping Children Safe in Education guidance, which is the statutory safeguarding guidance. This is a safeguarding issue, no doubt. We know that. And it does reinforce the fact that decisions must be made in the children's best interests, and it's relating to their welfare and also the legal duties of a school, not owing to ideological pressure. So I think that's a good thing. There's also some really clear red lines on single-sex facilities. So schools must now record and refer to each child's sex, not their gender identity. I think that's really good. Pupils must not use the opposite sex toilets or changing rooms or any boarding accommodation, anything like that. And when sports are single sex for safety reasons, there must be no exceptions. I might like to see that go a little bit further as well, but I think at the moment I'm giving thanks that now there is clear statutory backing for maintaining sex-based boundaries. I think that's a really good thing. And there is I think that there is a positive in that the guidance does talk about the need to involve parents, and that's a good thing. We know that's a brilliant principle. That's a God-given principle that we should be thankful for. There is a bit of a loophole that allows schools to keep parents out of the decision-making process if involving them is judged to be a greater risk to the child than involving them. I don't know what that could mean. I think that could be interpreted by those that have perhaps malevolent or certain intentions. I pray that would not be used widely. So I think that's just a bit of a balancing act at the moment. I personally would like parents to be involved in every case. Where the guidance is lacking is that schools can still transition students, and even at primary level, and I think that is really a travesty. Although it says they should exercise caution.
What are they saying about preferred pronouns?
So, I mean, that really is, again, up to the head teacher, because transitioning, so they're aware that social transition means the use of preferred pronouns. It should be done with caution at primary school, it's saying, and there should be a clear policy for handling requests to socially transition. It does say that they should prioritise the child's best interests, which may not align with the child's wishes. And I suppose, again, that could include pronouns. We just don't know what that means without objective criteria. I think every child could be in a particular school where perhaps there's a particular ideology amongst the leadership. Every child could be exceptional, or the rare child that will benefit from this social transition. Again, I just wish that the government would be clearer, and particularly at primary level. I think it's a real shame that there can't be a heavier hand there to provide real clarity. And I think it again places a heavy burden on head teachers who will have to make this decision. And although the guidance says that they should consider clinical advice, there's really no limits on what clinicians may recommend, and ultimately the decision rests entirely with the head teacher. And I think it's difficult for them to decide what is in the best interests of children. Yeah, they're being asked to act as psychologists, as therapists, as medical professionals, as social workers, and I think it's a really heavy burden. Yeah,
It really is. And it's so important to be showing compassion and empathy, isn't it? But not doing more harm. It's really tough.
Yeah.
But this is still in the consultation stages.
It is, absolutely. And that's a good thing, because it means that we do get a say. I hope and pray that many Christians, many sensible-minded folks will respond to this. It's open for 10 weeks. Now we're about 2 or 3 weeks in. So another 8 weeks or so. We'll be responding on behalf of ACT. But anyone can respond, whether you're a parent, a teacher, a leader, whether you just have a concern for vulnerable children. So yeah, do respond, do pray about this, and remember that the toll of this is borne by vulnerable children, who many of whom are very distressed, many of whom are very impressionable. And I think this is a fudged response. I don't think it is, a great response. We need more clarity, but may we have grace in how we communicate that.
And you've written an article on this, haven't you? So we'll put a link to that news article in the description for this podcast. And we'd love you to join us for our ACT prayer meeting this Monday evening. Lizzie, it's the weekend. We're going to put our feet up, have a brew.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to a lie-in tomorrow morning, actually, I have to say. It's been a busy week back.
It certainly has, and we wish you all a very happy weekend.